Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here. This is kind of a digital comics review, I guess. Mostly I realized in my last overly long review where I reviewed 10 comic books that there was one more comic book I wanted to talk about, which was All New X-Men, which I read digitally from my good YouTube friend Brandon. Gave me the digital code. So I got to read it right away rather than waiting for the trade. And this was really good. I had very low expectations. I was not when they've been previewing this episode, this concept. I thought it was a bad one, and I was not at all excited. And I don't love everything Brian Michael Bendis does. Every time I've read X-Men by him, I've just been kind of okay, that's sort of interesting, but not involved, not involving to me. But I found myself really involved here. I really liked the way he portrayed Cyclops, and I really liked the way he portrayed the Beast. And the whole situation, he set it up very well. Bendis did, and the art is really lovely by Stuart Immonen. That's a hard name to say. Look at those beautiful layouts. Immonen is obviously someone who works really well with the colorist. He leaves a lot of room for the colorist to work with, and it was just an exciting issue to look at. Cyclops is kind of a cool bad guy, or not quite bad guy. I kind of sympathize with him, and it's kind of funny to me to see Magneto as just kind of a henchman, but maybe he'll have more of a role as time goes on. And so what seemed like a dumb premise to me is suddenly seems like maybe it can work, or at least work for an arc or two. It's still hard to imagine how this is more than a really cool graphic novel, how it can be an ongoing series. But I like the portrayal of the early X-Men, and so I'm just really looking forward to seeing what they're going to do next. And then I also from Brandon got the New Avengers number 33. And this is part of, I guess, the final arc of the New Avengers before it goes back to number one and gets a new creative team. And it's been kind of an okay episode where there's some enemy of Doctor Strange who's taking over people and killing people with magic powers. I wonder if any of them will stay dead. But this issue is strange because it is drawn by what's his full name? It's someone Michael Oeming, and he's done a lot of indie work with Bendis, and he has this very crude style. And at times in this book, it almost looked like he wasn't even trying. It just had a very sloppy look. Not, I don't think a kid could really do this, but it feels like a kid channeling, I guess, Jack Kirby. And my ultimate thought on this art was that it worked on a layout level, and it was kind of reminds me of when you see layouts done by good artists, where they've just done a sketchy version of the comic book to lay everything out. But it was a very distracting art style, and it made the whole story seem more like a kid's comic book than it had in previous issues. So I feel like I would like Oeming's art in the right circumstances, but this was just the wrong place for it, and a real shock compared to the other issues, which are on the more hyper realistic style. And then I've continued to get the digital-only book Edison Rex, which is about the Lex Luthor type of character who has killed off the Superman-like character in his world and has suddenly realized he has to take over as the person who is the guardian of the world. And in this issue, a creation of his comes back, a creation based on the superhero. kind of like a almost. I mean, he's not really like a Bizarro Superman, but it has a bit of that flavor. So it was mildly interesting. It's kind of interesting to see. It's sometimes people's kind of alternative takes on Superman are more interesting than Superman himself. So it has a bit of that quality. It has a little bit of a Tom Strong feeling. And then at the end, there's this pretend advertisement. I don't know if anyone remembers from the 80s, or I think it was the 80s, but maybe the 70s, when they had lots of Hostess fruit pie ads in comic books. And so here's a pretend Hostess fruit pie ad, only it's called the Moistest. And it's kind of amusing. So Edison Rex, basically, I'd call it mildly amusing for someone who already reads comic books. You're definitely not missing out. I suppose someday it will come out in a paper version. But it's not bad. You know, I paid 99 cents. It's okay. And then my daughter and I read 4 issues of Adventure Time, again, digitally through my iPad. They were cheap, and we read 1 issue, and it was like, oh, let's read the next. And it took 4 issues to finish the story arc. Here are the 4 issues. And that was much too long. But for a while, it was quite enjoyable, and it was something both my daughter and I could enjoy. It's a bit snarky and stuff that my daughter completely misses, but the drawings are very delightful, and the characters are ones she can relate to. They're definitely kids' characters. Of course, she loves the bubblegum princess, but she also liked this Frost King. Probably the least interesting, actually, is Jake and Finn. Here's a more gross kind of picture where Finn is inside of Jake, and calling it a Jake suit, since Jake can change his body into any shape. But that means he's kind of, his face is coming out of Jake's mouth. So there are moments of grossness here, but it wasn't anything my daughter was bothered by. So we enjoyed reading it, but then it dragged out too long. If it had been a 2-issue story, it would have been great. Here's a nice, fanciful little image. So I hope going forward that they don't always do 4-issue stories, or because all of this kind of Adventure Time thing is so silly. If you stretch out the story for 4 issues, I guess it's a more marketable thing. They're going to sell them as graphic novels. But you start thinking about the story too much. You really want to just have fun and then move on and not think about the story too much. But if you've got kids, I think Adventure Time is worth your while. And I've never seen the TV show. And oddly, reading the comic book doesn't leave me dying to read the TV show. I enjoyed it as a comic book, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on something. Maybe I am. I'll have to try the TV show sometime. And then I've talked before about Mark Waid's Insufferable, about the Batman-like superhero and his Robin-like son who's rebelled against him, and how poorly they get along, and you kind of go back and forth on which character's more insufferable than the other. And I've loved so much of Mark Waid's work in recent years that I really want to like this, and it's his big digital experiment. But it just... Waid hasn't got a feel yet, I think, for this kind of weekly comic book that he's doing. It's a weekly comic book that's really maybe 5 or 6 pages long each week, or even sometimes less, sometimes more. But the story's just sort of going on, and I'm caring less and less about the publicity-hungry Robin character and the I don't even know how to characterize the Batman character. He just seems I don't know. He seems uber competent and disapproving, and yeah. Whoops. That's all the frames I did. I tried not to do too many frames of these stories, just enough to give you a taste. I like that picture a lot. I like the art in this quite a bit, but it's not working out. It's not working out for Mark Waid, this digital story, and I'm sad because I understand he's invested a lot of money. I don't know why he didn't just do these things on Comicology. And maybe if he weren't doing it as a weekly serial, he would have had a better grasp of the pacing. And it's the story's just gone on too long. So, and then also on his website is this other story called Pax Arena. And I haven't read all of the episodes yet, but it's quite promising. It's done in a kind of non-standard black and white style. You can see here that the lettering is a little different. The lettering's a little bit annoying. Occasionally it's hard to read. But it seems like an interesting sci-fi story about this woman who's a cop on another planet trying to solve a mystery on this planet that kind of has this brutal penal system where prisoners kill each other in the arena. So it seems pretty interesting, and I'm going to keep looking for that. Here's just, you get a little more idea of the artwork. It's very high contrast black and white artwork, and that's kind of neat because I haven't seen much of that lately. Yeah, so that's the end. A few things I've been reading digitally, and I'll talk to everyone later.